It's day 45 of the Iran war. President Trump has threatened to blockade all maritime traffic passing in and out of the Strait of Hormuz bound for Iranian ports. There are a number of Iranian ports here. What's expected to be the primary focus is Karg Island to the north there. That's where most of Iran oil exports are from, but also Jask port down to the south here. He's also threatened to interdict any traffic in international waters that has paid tolls to the Iranians and threatened to bomb to hell any Iranian resistance to this plan. President Trump claims there are other countries that are prepared to help, but that's prompted Sir Keir Starmer to say that the UK is not going to be involved at all. What is interesting is how would this blockade be established? Well, it won't be like World War II, simply putting a line of ships across the Strait of Hormuz. Not only would that be incredibly vulnerable, but it's also not really required. The main focus will be on the big tanker ships coming from Karg Island. You need to detect them, track them, and potentially interdict them, and you can use a variety of different ways to do that. The US has already got 2 destroyers in the region. They will be heavily augmented by air power, operating either from the carrier group or land-based, and they have access to helicopters as well if they need to board vessels or indeed to detain them. So one of the big challenges facing the US is the minefield that's just the southern side of the Strait of Hormuz. When we think of mines, we think of conventional floating mines, World War II. These are not going to be used in the Strait of Hormuz because they're very difficult to track, and it'd be just as much danger to the Iranians as it would be to anybody else. Instead, Iran has got moored mines and seabed mines that have both got magnetic triggers and also acoustic triggers. They have up to 6,000 of these in their inventory. The challenge is how many of them are actually in the Strait of Hormuz. Some suggest that there may be none, but most conventional wisdom thinks the number is about 12. That shouldn't be too difficult for the US to counter. They have state-of-the-art ships like this littoral combat ship with mine countermeasures on board, the USS Santa Barbara, triple hulled. It doesn't trigger the magnetic detectors, but it's also the first time this ship's been used operationally, which should make it interesting for the crew. Of course, the Iranians themselves will not be taking this line down. They have spent 30 to 40 years preparing for this day. They know full well the Americans would dominate them militarily in conventional warfare, but they've got a collection of Shahed drones, ballistic missiles, anti-ship missiles, and also fast patrol boats, miniature, autonomous, packed full of explosives. Now, individually, any of those would not present a major threat to an American ship, but the Iranians will be looking to counter military quality from the Americans with quantity. In other words, to use quantity to deluge defences and swamp the American defences, potentially facing one particular vessel. Of course, will this actually work? Well, historically, blockades have taken time to actually deliver results, and that's time that President Trump doesn't have. It's also true that the US has previously said that the Straits of Hormuz is not of great interest to the Americans, therefore why are they getting involved at all? There's also a risk, though, that of course China gets a good proportion of its oil from not only Iran but also the Middle East. And if America was to start intercepting ships bound for China, or worse still, Chinese ships, a grave risk of escalation. Through all of this, though, it's pretty evident that military action has not delivered the strategic success that President Trump has been seeking. Despite US military dominance, Iran still has a stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz and significant leverage for any forthcoming negotiation.